My name is Anne, and I am the founder and CEO of House of M Beauty, and we make saffron infused skincare product. House of M is the first Viet-owned beauty brand to be launched in Nordstrom. I came here for school at 15, so a Vietnamese immigrant.
Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over.
Thank you so much, Anne. I've been following you for a while now. I'm impressed with the speed of how you got this up and running and how far you've come in your journey. What was your journey like to the U.S.?
I came here at 15 for school as an international student. And before that, my dad passed away within like the next 3 years. So by the time I was in senior year, my mom then passed away. But yes, I came here as an international student.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
And were they both living in Vietnam at the time?
Yeah. Yeah, they're both in Vietnam.
What happens when you lose both parents in Vietnam and you're basically here by yourself?
Yeah, it was rough. For my dad, I was there with him. And then I came here for school. But for my mom, I still haven't really dealt with the grief. Just because I was away, it was the logistic, it just didn't make sense then. And she got very sick and I couldn't be with her for a few years. That was actually the time that my brother had to fly back and to take care of her and take care of her like funeral and everything.
I didn't know much about this. So obviously I'm not prepared, but I do, if you're comfortable, to talk about the feelings of sort of not having, because I mean, my mind is going there right now. And if you
Mm-hmm.
feel uncomfortable, just let me know. But,
Yeah.
the feelings of sort of having to kind of navigate the world when you're so young, right? You're 18, 19 at the time in a
Yeah.
new country. How does this all work out for you mentally and emotionally?
Um, at that point, I was too young to be able to process everything. And I was in the mentality of do or die, so sink or swim. At that time, I lost not only my mom, but the financial support and everything that it comes with to be able to stay here, go to school, get a degree. And I had to basically give up all of that, got a job at a pho restaurant, and put a roof over my head. So at that point, I um, basically wanted to survive. So I didn't really had much time to process.
Damn. At a pho restaurant?
Yeah, yeah, 6 days a
My,
week.
how far you've come.
Yeah.
And it's like listeners and, people who don't track your social media the way I do have no idea what the relevance of that sort of 6 days a week at a pho restaurant, you know,
Yeah.
watching you go from, that. I mean, it's a few short years, right?
Yeah. Well, that was when I was 18. I'm 27 now. But yeah.
When you think about, you have a daughter, right?
Hmm.
When you think about your daughter and the future of her growing up and having basically everything laid out for her and the difficulties that you've experienced, do you ever think about sort of how easy it's going to be for her and without the challenges that we faced as immigrants or these second generation kind of watching the struggles and going through the struggles yourself? Do you ever think about like how easy it is going to be for her and without the challenges that we faced? Is there a way to kind of mitigate that and to kind of insert these challenges in their lives?
That's a great question. For me, even though my journey was very rough, and I truly believe everything happened for a reason, and it led me here. My job here on earth for my children is to give them an easier time emotionally, financially, but at the same time, I have to draw boundaries. So I'm here to guide, but not to lay out their lives for them. So whatever way that they decided to go, they still have to go through the challenges. And we still go through challenges day in and day out. So for me, I would not want them to have to go through everything that I've been through to be able to like succeed in something. And I don't believe, that is the only way. But yeah, I would say be there to guide them, but not be involving too much.
I read a lot of biographies on people who have accomplished things both inside the Vietnamese community and obviously for outside. I've been reading this for my entire
Yeah.
life, and the one of the common things are founders and people who do big things go through this sort of adversity early in life. And I think about that a lot about my children, my two kids,
Mhm.
um, the stories that we have as the Vietnamese immigrant community throughout the world, and even the country of Vietnam itself had gone through such heavy diversity to
Mhm.
become the power that it is today. And
Mhm.
so I'm always curious about how parents and, real struggling stories of people like you,
Mhm.
how we reframe or kind of rethink about our children's future. And that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think for me, that's why I wanted to share my story. Number one is to help people think that it is possible, but number two, also to let people know you don't have to go through these incredibly dark times so that you can finally chase your dream. You can decide to do it right now, and whatever that you decided to do, you still, of course, will go through the obstacles, but it's in the mindset. I feel
How do you think the dark times shaped you?
it definitely made me who I am today. It definitely led me to create House of M. I would prefer to not go through it and still have the gut to pursue my dream. But of course, I wasn't mentally there to begin with, prior to going through postpartum depression. But yeah, I believe everything happened for a reason, and everything, all the dots connected when you look back.
How do you go from working 6 days a week at a pho restaurant to today? Can you walk me through that?
Yes, so I work at a pho restaurant. I would save up anything that I can save and purchasing makeup products and then ship it back to Vietnam. That's how
Mm.
I got started. And then that business kind of grew. And when I met my husband, he wanted to pursue his dream of building classic VW buses because he was working a 9 to 5. So then I got a 9 to 5 to help pay the bills and to support his dream. That lasts for about a year. Then I jumped in and helped him with his business, the finance, the planning, and everything. And that was when we have our first child, and I went through postpartum. And at that point, it was not enough for me. Like being his partner in business, being a wife, a mom, it was just not enough. And I wanted to do something for myself. And that was the reason, or like the spark of wanting to create House of M.
Wow, it's a cool story.
Yeah.
And then how do you jump off from the VW scene into your own business?
It was in the beginning, I was still struggling with postpartum. I discovered saffron through my doctor. I was breastfeeding at the time and I couldn't be on medication. And my doctor said saffron, medicinal quality saffron, is actually a natural mood enhancer and it helps you to sleep very well. And I tried that for a few months and it actually helped me a whole lot. And during that time, I did some research and I found out that saffron has a lot of skincare benefits that mainstream market doesn't know. They didn't know at the time. No one really used saffron as a main ingredient in skincare. And that was when I shared that with my husband. He believed in me enough that he said, take our saving that we've been putting aside for our first home and start your own thing. And that was his trust and his like support really fueled me to, okay, this is what I have. Like, I'm going to go with it. And I was scared of failing. And he said, we came from nothing. We got here. If it's gone, we can build it again. And that to me is the exact push that I needed to start House of M.
We'll return back to House of M. I want to talk a little bit about postpartum because it's not talked about enough in our communities.
Yeah, I agree.
How do you know if you have it? And how do you know? Because I asked that because sometimes we're in denial when we are going through mental conditions and we just, people might call it out and we're in denial. How do we know? How does a woman know when they have it? And then once they know, how do you encourage it? How do you encourage a woman to go and get checked up and, and kind of like really look into the problem?
Yeah. So in the beginning, after I was giving birth, I have these feelings of, just not having any motivation for myself. The only motivation I have was just to keep my baby alive. And I reach out to this, it's a free program in the city, like Orange County. They would send, I think, a therapist to your home at no cost and would check up on you every 2 weeks or so. And I went through that for a few months and it just didn't help. Like, I still continued to feel really bad. And that was when I decided to seek like professional help. And I would say the one thing that people can help other moms or the family members can help other moms is to not minimize their feelings. So you have to validate their feelings. You have to take their word for what it is and take it seriously. Because I've talked to a lot of moms, and that's the common issue is that they feel like their voice not being heard. They feel like their family members don't understand what they're going through, and it just get very lonely. It can get very lonely.
I suspect a lot of marriages fail during this time, difficult time, because men have no clue. I mean, I'm making generalizations here, but men typically don't understand anything, right? And then to put on this additional pressure that we can't really see, there's no visual signs, there's no, and men are kind of like, we're kind of bullheaded. We don't want to deal with these tough things that women want to communicate with words, and we're blind to all that. I wish there was these programs that, before you have a baby, as a man, you should know that this is the thing that could happen with your wife and new mother.
Yeah, there's birthing class that people take togethers and things like that. But I would say, be there and support as much as you can. And even though sometimes you don't understand it at all. And when the woman like step foot out of it, sometimes we look back and it looks silly, but at that moment, it's so strong. The feelings are there. It's strong. It's valid. And you gotta have to validate those feelings. You have to be there and support emotionally and physically, and then reach out for help if you cannot. You cannot do it on your own. I guarantee it. Yeah.
Now, all of this was going on in the early days of House of M, or did you start it after dealing with your postpartum depression?
After. So afterwards I discovered saffron, and then I was so fascinated with the ingredient. And that was when I started to research, working with chemists and finding labs and things like that.
Got it. Where'd you come up with the name?
M is for miracles. It's to look back on my journey. There's a lot of miracles happened throughout the journey that I can't explain with words. There's helps. There's, if I could have just make one wrong decision, my life would have completely turned a different way. So there's a guidance out there. I keep saying that my mom and dad guided me, but there's a lot of things that happens that you can't really use any other things to explain but the word miracles.
It's interesting. In our culture, we have this idea of "bomef fuho," if they've
Mhm.
gone to the other side. That there's no real translation in English, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And all you can feel is like there's spirits with you and they guide you through things. When you look back in life, you're like, there's so many moments I could have made wrong decisions, but I didn't. So I'm so grateful
Can,
for
can
that.
you give me one example of sort of a fork in the road where, could have really unraveled all the work that you did?
It would have been way back then when I was just alone working in a pho restaurant. I could have easily got into drugs, alcohol. I'm alone here. And I was young. But I didn't. I just work and home and that's it. And I didn't go out and party and all of those things. And that's what I meant by the wrong decisions. There
Yeah,
has to be some other force out there that guiding me on this journey.
amazing.
Yeah.
So you go to chemist and you figure it out and you test it and you are ready to go to market.
Mhm.
How does it go from being like, okay, I green light, I like what I developed. How do you
Mhm.
take that and then push it to the market?
Um, it was through the Vietnamese community. So when I started, I was too insecure with my English, so I didn't launch in mainstream. I launched within the Vietnamese community first, and we have a lot of Facebook groups on Facebook that people would sell things like clothes, skincare products. So that's how I got started. I just constantly post on there and then outreaching to like Vietnamese influencers and celebrities. And that was when chị Thanh Thảo got back to me, and she's if you guys not know, she's a very famous Vietnamese singer, and she was the only one that responded back to my message and decided to help, wanted to try, loved it, and decided to help.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
I think as a community, we're not quite there yet with the internal support of members that we
Mm-hmm.
want to uplift or amplify yet, and then that culture is changing for sure. I'm not saying that it's not there, but in
Mm-hmm.
the beginning, I think in the first 40 years of our existence, in the United States, there's this kind of weird carryover from the old country that we're not
Mm-hmm.
really supporting each other and kind of pushing. But why do you think that's the case?
I would say it was from wartime. It's a natural defense mechanism. It's a lot of individualistic. You came here, you have to survive on your own. You don't have time or resources or energy to support one another. And that's completely okay. You build a life for your family, you raise your children, and now your children are at a better place that they can uplift one another. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Like you've seen this movement within the Vietnamese community that now that we bond together, we
Yeah.
actually uplift one another, and it's great.
Yeah, there's so many people doing that, and it's so amazing. Shout out to Lim Kiu,
Yeah,
over at
for
Ing
sure.
Foundation. She's doing that, and In Foundation, not Ing,
Yeah,
but she's doing that, and
yeah,
Jess Vu over Vietnam Entertainment. All these
yes,
wonderful women just
yes.
really putting it out there for us.
Yeah, for sure. And would think like Ji Lin and Ji Jess have helped me so much, on this journey ever since like we decided to branch out to mainstream too. And it's another world of like Vietnamese Americans that I didn't like get in contact with. So like I'm so grateful for all the people that I've met throughout the journey that just decided to help us.
Yeah, like I saw you hanging out with Michelle Phan, and that was like such a big moment, right?
Yes, it was a full circle moment. When I was in Vietnam, I grew up watching her, and she was the inspiration that, wow, that's beauty industry. I love that. I was obsessed with. I still am watching makeup tutorials, skincare hauls, and all that. I didn't care about shoes or clothes, but
Mm,
makeup, skincare was my thing, and that was all thanks to Michelle.
wow.
Yeah.
What do you think that's in saffron that is there any scientific properties that is in saffron that's creating all this good stuff for us?
Yes, there's actually a lot of data and research. If you ingest it internally, it is a natural mood enhancer, and it's known in the OBGYN like community too. And on your skin, saffron is actually one of the very few ingredients that can calm your skin and also brighten at
Mm.
the same time. So that is the struggle with the customers on the market. A lot of people with sensitive skin, the products on the market for sensitive skin is soothing and calming, and that's it. And the products that for brightening will irritate people with sensitive skin or rosacea. And saffron, because it is high in antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, it's a very great healing agent, but it's also very high in vitamin C as well. So that was the struggle with especially moms like postpartum, and they wanted to take care of their skin again. That was my struggle. Yeah.
I'm not trying to be funny right now, but I think I need some House of M on my skin too.
Oh yeah. I thought you came across it already. I'm sorry. I was sending you some.
No, 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 no. No, no, no. That's not what I mean. I just think that, a lot of times men are not thinking about skincare, right? We
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
some things that we don't, and then, all these years of drinking alcohol, drying out your skin and being in the
Oh yeah.
sun.
Yeah. Not wearing sunscreen.
Yeah, big problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
As somebody who knows nothing about beauty, like I don't know a lot about the beauty market. I just know that there's some major players in the world like
Mhm.
L'Oreal and yada, 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 all these Revlon, and they dip their toes in everything that you can imagine from like hardware, like nail clippers to skincare, nail
Mhm.
polish. These are mega, mega brands that have been around sometimes for 100 years and they're just acquiring all these brands.
Mhm.
How do you go up against knowing that there's this big ecosystem out there? How do you know that I'm going to do this and I'm going to put every ounce of energy and go for it?
That's the beauty of the beauty industry, actually. Now the customers want something unique. And yes, these are big conglomerates that they own basically everything. But when they launch something, it's for the masses and it's too broad, and there's no differentiation anymore. And sometimes that's not the way to go for the beauty industry. Customers start getting overwhelmed with all these brands that there's no point of difference. So I would say like find your niche. Niche is actually a beautiful thing, and it's not small like people may think it is. And for me, coming from a consumer standpoint, I collect makeup and skincare products for so long. I know what's missing on the market and be able to identify that and be able to execute that and translate that to the consumer. That is how you be able to set yourself apart. And I wouldn't say compete, because eventually, you mentioned they will acquire other brands,
Right.
and that's totally okay with us. Yeah.
There's three things that I learned from you by watching, and I'll get to them, but I'll just name them right now. So hopefully we can kind of like have this in the conversation. The first thing is your ability to network. The second thing is your understanding of sort of refinement in the way that your brand identity visual has been portrayed visually.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is going from like a pho restaurant worker to somebody in the last 20 minutes that we've been talking about really understands business principles very, very well. How you can, and I would love to hear the way these three things unfolded for you, because that's a short amount of time, 10 years, to kind of pick up all these things without a mentor. I mean, maybe you do have it, but these are very specific skills that women in their perhaps 40s and 50s who've been in the corporate world or have worked for companies that have, this sort of brand integration or this trajectory. How did you learn these three things? And let's start with the networking, because your networking skills are phenomenal.
Yeah. I believe that I got that from our community, actually. Vietnamese people were just naturally caring. We're naturally very genuine, and we pay attention to the small details. So if you have a birthday coming up, you just a small text is it means a lot more to somebody than, things like that. A lot of personalization. And I have to credit that to like our community. I feel like our community, and Asian people in general, we're just naturally caring. And we're not like too straightforward, too like 50-50 and things like that. The second part of the visual for House of M, that came from me knowing what's out there on the market and distinguish early on what I want to do with House of M. It is a prestige brand because saffron is naturally very expensive. We
Mm.
also make it in France. That costs 10 times more than making it in other countries. But we abide with the European standards and we can export anywhere else on earth and things like that. I wanted to create something intentional, truly fill the void and truly is at the high quality. So in order to sell a high quality product, it cannot be in a packaging that is too cluttery, or in the visual branding that is too colorful or too playful. So those are the things that I distinguished early on. We went through, of course, we're still self-funded. So in the beginning, I didn't have big budgets to execute these things, and we had to work with what we got. But finding the people eventually to be able to execute your vision is just as important as like having a vision and not be able to do it. And what the third one was
This business sense that you have.
the the business sense is I learn a lot from podcasts. I learned a lot from just people hearing people's journey and story. I obviously didn't go to college, so I couldn't get a degree. But mentors is also a great way to learn as well. I have a few mentors, and one of them, she used to be a chief merchant at Sephora for 16 years.
Mm.
And she have been an incredible like supporter of us and really helped guided me through on this journey.
I'm blown away that you didn't go to college.
I didn't. I have a high school degree.
Absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we in the Vietnamese community is so chú trọng. We
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
that academic sort of journey above everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes feel like that's not a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think drive and ambition
Yeah.
is kind of, up there along with, the good grades.
Yeah. I would say the more important skill set for me and for my children would be to be able to analyze and be conscious enough and realizing these are your shortcomings and these are the things that you need to work on. And I 100% believe you have to grow your personal growth in order to grow your business, and be able to work through those. Those are more important for me. Of course, grades and going to school, and if you can learn, that's totally fine. There's a lot of things I wish I could learn in school now that I run my business. But the more important ones, I would say, like, live consciously enough to figure out and perfect yourself along the way.
Now I'm going to ask a personal question, because I see you hanging out with a lot of circles that are very educated. They've gone very far in the Vietnamese community. These are leaders amongst leaders in the pictures and the posts that I've watched. Do you ever feel out of place, or do you ever feel insecure about the amount of education or any of that?
Oh yeah, imposter syndrome is real. I'm not gonna deny it. I mean, but I would say be kind. Like, just treat everybody as just like somebody you truly want to connect. And not going into it like, oh, this is celebrity. I'm gonna get whatever, whatever. No, like, just create a beautiful connection and things will lead to one another, or it might not lead to anywhere, and that's completely okay. But going into it like that. But yeah, like I would feel like, oh, why did I get here? How did I get here? Why am I even here? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I asked that because I go through that, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
takes somebody who's gone through it consistently. I constantly go through this, to know. And it's like, well, when I look at you, I'm like, oh, she's probably got a business degree from USC or from, from Wharton or something to really,
No. No.
So it's very encouraging to hear your story and to know that there's a way to kind of go around all this stuff and do it on your own. And you don't have to buy into this idea of paying 60 grand a year to learn business. And many times, frankly, learning all that stuff will kind of hinder us in our decision making and analysis
Yeah.
paralysis.
Yes. And, being, I totally agree with that because for me, we're being scrappy and we self-funded and things like that really help to build your business. And don't let other people say like, oh, you got to go out there and fundraise. And I've known so many brands that go out there fundraise millions to start a beauty brands, and it end up not being successful just because these idea that we think we have to
Yeah.
do, and we don't start until those things are lined up and those things are perfect. And it's never going to be that way. Like for me, I always like advocate, you just have to start, and don't let all these things hinders you.
It's hard when you have a lot of education sometimes.
Yeah.
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 Gets in the way because you're thinking, well, here's the rule here, here's the way this person did, here's precedent over here, so let me avoid that. And then, but if you do it organically the way you're talking about it, perhaps the road leads you down certain paths that organically take shape and they take root, and your journey
Yeah.
becomes a different thing that, that's
Ye-
different from the textbook.
yes, I agree. And I heard somewhere like write your goals in pens, but the steps to get there in pencils, and
Mm,
always be open and mindful that like, okay, one door might be all closed, but always have faith that it leads you to something else that you don't know. Like our brains, we're tiny beings, we don't know what life will take you, but
yeah.
be open to everything.
You show up to a lot of events and functions.
Yeah.
I run into you, and you're all over a lot of places. And
Mhm.
as people with family, entrepreneurs like us, and
Mhm.
artists, and how do you manage to kind of balance it all out with the families?
Um, there's no such thing as balancing, number one.
Hmm.
I think people put too much pressure on balancing and doing great at everything. And sometimes it's just, that's not how it is. Or maybe it's just not how my life works out. I also have an incredibly supportive husband. He's an introvert. He loves to stay home.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, to watch the kids. Of course, like sometimes, like we would he would miss me, and I would miss him a whole lot, and we would work that whole out um on our own time. But yeah, it's there's no such thing as balancing. It's almost like juggling a bunch of like balls, and some are plastic and some are glass. And some days you drop the plastic one and it's not so painful, but sometimes you drop the glass one, it's really painful. But yeah, motherhood and running a business is, I don't want to put the pressure that you have to balance everything.
It's very wise and honest to put that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
because we're
think because yeah, the concept of people is like, oh, you gotta, everything has to be perfect. And I'm like, understanding that when you take time away from your family, you're not gonna be with them, but you're doing something else that's also important. And when you're there, you gotta be 100% there. And when you're with your children, I'm 100% with my children. I don't pick up my phone and doing other things.
right, no rocket, all right.
And that's a saying that you can't translate into English either.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
really can't.
Yeah.
But you've managed to understand that at such a young age to be so frank about there's no real balance if you're gonna do something and take it to the finish line.
Yes. And understanding that relieve a lot of stress,
Yes.
relieve a lot of heartaches. And it's easier for you to go to the finish line and not give up, because trust me, there's days that I miss my son something, and it kills me inside. But I have to put on a scale, and is that truly something important for me to be there? Then I already made a commitment, and I have to be there.
Mm.
Yeah.
What were some of the most difficult things that you faced in your journey so far?
I would say is people's like judge the book by its cover. So that was the one main thing that in the beginning I didn't want to put my face out there, because I'm young, I'm a woman, an Asian woman at that. And a lot of the times you have to push through the nose. Like even early days when I start working with chemists and manufacturers, a lot of them are much older. They have a certain way of formulating, or they're used to formulating with paraben, which is a well-known preservatives that could cause cancer. And they don't want you to change their ways, and you have to hear a lot of no's, and people make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about, and that's extremely hard. But stay on your ground, like be absolutely clear of what you want and be determined to get that, and take nothing else. So hearing a lot of no's early on kind of like helped me.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about paraben. What is paraben?
Paraben is a preservative that have been used in the beauty industry for a long time. And not until recently, about 10 years back, a lot of data start coming out that it's actually kind of harmful to your health. So there was a big paraben free, and finding a different preservative system than using parabens. And a lot of chemists, they're not used to that. And so, yeah.
Without getting into any trade secrets, can you kind of talk about that? Like how you've kind of maneuvered around it?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of other preservative systems that are cleaner and healthier. This entire clean beauty movement actually paved the way for a lot of clean and natural brands out there. Of course, you still have to have a stable preservative system that your products don't get, spoil. But that helps us a lot.
Got it. Yeah, because it's in everything. And I imagine that when you go outside of a system that's entrenched like paraben,
Mhm.
eventually your margins go down, your cost goes up, and it
Mhm.
becomes just such an undoable thing at the end of the day because of the economics of the mix, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you experience, or do you have to price a little higher as a result of
Um,
this?
no, it's actually not that. It was the finding the chemists that have experience with
Mm.
formulating with something that's different than paraben.
Got
And
it.
there's a lot of options out there. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. And what are the sort of things that scare you today, keeps you up at night with the business?
Um, I would say cash flow. It's a good problem to have. Working with the retailers, the terms are
Yeah,
completely different than selling it to a mom and pop shop or a small boutique. So that is something that, we're going through, and it is a growing pain. But it's also helped to push me to finally decided to fundraise. So we're going to start our first round next year.
got it. Now let's
Yeah.
break that down. When you're dealing with a big brand like Nordstrom's, and we're
Mhm.
talking terms, we're
Mhm.
talking net 30, net 60, 120. I mean, what are we looking at compared to what mom and pop shops? Because I want the listeners to kind of get an understanding of why it's difficult for cash flow when you're
Yeah.
in a position of selling to a big box store or somebody like Nordstrom.
Yeah. They Nordstrom is net 45, so it's not so bad.
Not too bad. Yeah.
Sephora sometimes can be net 90, net 120. For mom and pop, they pay you, then you ship out the products. There's also a few things involved. With small boutique shops, they only order 100 pieces. Nordstrom ordered 5,000 pieces. So then everything is tied up in the inventory. And then on our end, it takes us about 5 months to produce one batch. So that is a more difficult thing to solve compared to the terms actually the retailers paying you. It's not really about the terms, it's about how much they're ordering all at once and how long it takes us to produce.
So tricky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cash flow is such a big thing. And then you have to bring in investors and fundraise to cover sort of this process of kind of like making batches ahead of time so
Mhm.
you can get to the supply, back out and turn it over. And
Yes. Yes. And working with retailers, they also want minis, different sizes, different bundles, and all those SKUs that you will produce, and it also costs to produce them. So that's another thing. But eventually, my goal with House of M is we're gonna have an acquisition. So having that clear path in mind, that was the reason why we wanted to, okay, let's get investors in and let's really build this up like properly.
who do you go to get that? I mean, that's an insight that a lot of people don't. That's an exit strategy. That,
Mhm.
excuse me, that's an exit strategy that many people in business, when we start out, we don't think about that. We don't think that, this can be acquired for for a pretty penny, right?
Yeah.
Who taught you that? Who kind of like instilled that sort of information in you?
I've watched trends, and also I've seen brands getting acquired. And I understand that, in order to be successful and getting the most out of it, it is my baby, but at the same time, it is a business. So you have to make the best decision for yourself, for your investors, as well as like the customers. The customers number one, of course. That's why the formulations and the quality of the product, we put a lot of thoughts into it. But early on, I don't want to hang on to this.
Mm.
Yeah.
What other thing would you get into? What other industry or would you stay in the same industry and just do another product?
I would say in the same industry. So you're pretty much one of a very few people that I share this with. But my goal here is to, after exiting House of M, that would be my portfolio. And then I can actually make an impact, a change in the beauty industry in terms of packaging. So all of these packaging now, there's no real solution for sustainability.
Mm.
A lot of people would want refillable packaging. It's basically the same plastic, and they just put a bulkier case around it and make it refillable. And those are because the consumer wants to be more environmentally conscious, but the industry has not caught up to it yet. So then after exiting House of M, that is my portfolio. Then I can go out there, fundraise, and make real changes within like the packaging industry and actually invest in technology research and truly finding out the biodegradable plastic. The biodegradable options now is not compatible with nature, so it's even more harm than good, and that is the route that I wanted to be in.
That's a really unique perspective. And I'm going to ask you if we can unpack that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
When you sell these units,
Mm-hmm.
and you fill them in with the mix and you fill in with the product,
Mm-hmm.
removing this idea of selling it over and over after people run out and just kind of replenishing with a sort of like a pouch that has the filler, right? It
Yeah.
drives down the cost substantially of a unit that you can sell for a higher margin, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you kind of remove the unit's ability to kind of sell for a higher price, right? Because now it's not in a beautiful bottle, you can't really hold it. You're refilling it with something that you already own. Doesn't that drive down the business model a little bit? And maybe is that why the big guys won't do it?
It's the big guys wants to do it, trust me, and we wanted to do it, but when you wanted to change consumer perspective and a consumer behavior, it's one tiny step at a time. You cannot, you have to think of the consumer experience as a whole. So now if you wanted to use a serum and it's in a pouch, they're not going to use, like I'm not using it. And me coming from a consumer
Yeah.
standpoint, packaging is also everything. And we cannot change the industry in that way. We just have to have better options for the packaging, the individual packaging, and still making it looks nice, feels nice, and consumer wants to continue using it.
Yeah, because you see that in the soap industry, right? Dish
Yeah.
soap and stuff like that. You see, you can buy the bottle and then you can buy the refiller that's in a different separate pouch.
Mhm.
And I think that when you're not putting things on your face or something so valuable as your body, then you can kind of switch modes, thinking, I'm just going to buy the refill. But I
Yeah.
think when it comes to your things on your face, that unit is so tangible.
And also too, those pouches and bottles are also damaging the environment. So when
Mhm.
I'm talking about changing the packaging industry, it's those units too. Those units cannot be broken down. A lot of the times there's sustainable, compostable plastic on the market, but it's not compostable in nature. You have to have a specific heat and the way to recycle it, to breaking it down, which no one here, all these plants in the US don't do that. So you're marketing something as a sustainable option, but in reality, it's not actually helping the earth. So when I talk about the change I want to make, it's everything. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
How often do you go back to Vietnam?
I haven't been back ever since my mom passed away. I haven't been back. It's just life happens. And yeah, I think that's one part in me that I'm just terrified of dealing with the grief.
Mm, I can imagine.
Getting back to the same house and that you grew up in is hard. So I miss them a lot and I cry a whole lot of times, but at least I'm here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're separate, you're detached from it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So eventually I will. Yeah.
And do you have a lot of family left in Vietnam?
I have my brother, and distance like cousins
Yeah.
and yeah.
And what about having product in Vietnam, House of M? Is there, is that a distribution channel that you send to?
Yeah. So the small boutiques that we sell to, a lot of them ship to Vietnam to sell there on their own. However, as a brand, right now our focus is here in the US market and really establish within like the retail world. And after that, then hopefully going through, the Sephora channels to be in Southeast Asia and Vietnam and Middle East and also Europe as well.
Mm, got it. What kind of advice would you give to people who are starting out in business and entrepreneurs?
Um, just start. That would be number one
Mm,
thing. Don't wait for everything to be perfect before you start. And you can figure out the perfect things as you go. But number one thing, most important, is just start. If you have an idea that keep you up at night, start working on it. Number two would be again working on yourself and analyzing what's your pros and cons, and working on the cons so that you can also improve the business. Yeah.
I have always respected you from afar, just watching how you operate. Today, I've gained a deeper understanding of the way your mind works. And not that I'm surprised, but I'm definitely impressed in a way that I wasn't expecting.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. It means a lot to me. Yeah, and
And
I love what you do, and I also like watch how you've grown this podcast and just you as a person. And every single time, like I get to meet you at events, like it's always a joy. And this is truly an opportunity that I'm very grateful for. So thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And I know that you will inspire a lot of Vietnamese young people in our community and abroad to see that hard work does pay off. You just have to push through constantly and really keep your head up.
Yeah, and don't give up.
Yeah, and don't give up. Yeah.
It's hard. It sounds easy to say it, but it's so hard. But don't give up. These successes is coming from days that you wanted just to give up and you didn't. The next day you wake up and you do it all over again.
Yeah. I am so grateful for you to share really hard topics to talk about.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I want to really show the everything, like the goods and the bads and the beautiful things and also the very hard and difficult things, and not just painting this perfect pictures. Like it's not perfect. And really inspire others that if you really crave something enough, if that's your passion, you don't need millions of dollars. You don't need a college degree. You don't need family backing you up. You just need to start at something. And that's the belief that my dad instilled in me very young. Like America is the land of opportunity. It truly is.
A really wonderful perspective. And, hopefully we've started here and we will see how you grow and develop in the next few years and come back on to talk about the biodegradable solutions and, all this other future wonderful ideas that you have and to watch you execute it.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. The Vietnamese is produced by Brittany Tran. Special thanks to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and comment. Please rate and give us a review wherever you find our podcasts.